Hi, smart moms and dads. We are so happy to have you join us for another episode of the Brainy Moms podcast, brought to you today by Learning RX Brain Training Centers. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Moore. I'm joined by my co host, Sandy Zamalis. And Sandy and I are excited to bring you a conversation with our guest, Dr. Jodi Aman. Dr. Jodi is a psychotherapist, an author, TEDx speaker, and a doctor of social work with 28 years of experience in clinical practice. Dr. Jodi helps her clients heal from trauma, read the world, and reclaim self acceptance and joy. She's the creator of Compass, an emotional wellness curriculum for middle and high school students to help reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression. Her talk show, Ask Dr. Jodi, is live streamed weekly on her YouTube channel at Dr. Jodi, where she shares mental health and relationship advice. She's the author of several books, including Anxiety, I'm So Done With You, a teen's guide to ditching toxic stress and hardwiring your brain for happiness. She's helped over 2 million people understand and reverse the current mental health crisis. Let's welcome Dr. Jodi Aman. Hi, Dr. Jodi.
Hello, good to see you.
Good to see you too. So, I listened to your TED Talk this morning. I really liked your take on what is
Great.
causing this rise, right, in teen mental health problems. And actually, I think you refer to it as an epidemic. Like, why is that anxiety rising? And I love how you broke it down into those three different areas. And I was super intrigued by this idea of chores helping calm anxiety. Would you share this idea with us? Because how easy would that be to implement?
Yeah, when somebody has anxiety, when your child has anxiety, you try to take things off their plate. You're kind of our mentality is like ease them, let them relax a little bit. But it's actually counterproductive because we're really telling them you can't handle stuff. With the modern conveniences, with the rise of modern conveniences, and with us having less things to do, our brain has developed for 2 million years to solve problems all day so we could survive. We don't need to do that as much anymore. We don't need to solve problems all day, but that capability is still there. And because the capability is still there, we replace it. Like our mind is like, we might not be safe, find a problem. So it's replaced with negativity, unless we're like creative and we're doing something else that would could be a chore too. But so with the decrease in us having to do all these things to survive, we're actually creating all this mind space for us to go into the negative. And so I could see that getting worse and worse and worse. And you could see this generation having less and less work ethic. And some of that's good because our work ethic was kind of put onto us with the Industrial Revolution to try to get us to work. Except for it's like there's this entitlement not to have to, that they're being taught. It's not them. It's not the young people that are the problem. It's culturally put on them. I think that's where that marketing piece comes in, is where we have messages constantly accessible to us 24 hours a day. These marketers could access us and telling us that we should just get stuff. Just because it's cool, we should just get stuff. So those two things combine, having less to do to survive, being able to just go and get some food out of our cupboard and eat it instead of making it, or whatever else we had to do, to contribute to our family. We don't have to do any of that anymore. And so there's a lot of space. It's almost like a luxury problem. When people have more and more luxury, they have this different kind of anxiety. If you have trauma and you have a lot of difficulty, you have one kind of anxiety, but you are efforting and you're overcoming it and you're building resilience. If you have a lot of luxury and you have that kind of anxiety, it just grows because the more anxiety you have, the more frozen you are. It's not a building resilience kind of anxiety. So this is what we're facing.
Yeah. So, do you think that we instinctively try to fill that space, right? If we aren't, if we aren't having to run from the tiger in the bush behind us anymore, right? If we're not having to solve big problems all day, every day anymore, because We don't even have to remember phone numbers anymore, right? And but do you think that we instinctively fight against that idea of just being, of just sitting in that space, of just appreciating some downtime? Do you think we
I think when you say instinctually, I think that's true. But when you say we instinctually try, that means it's intentional or that we're doing something. I think that happens really subconsciously, that when there's no problem, our mind has been trained to try to find one. So it's kind of happening outside of our awareness, though, because when we get the information the mind's saying, like when we hear those thoughts, or when we have awareness of what those thoughts are, then we put meaning around those thoughts. So that's our participation in it. But first they come, because our mind's just going to do that on its own. And yes, it also, of course, depends on our experiences in life. If we've had a lot of chaos in our life, then then that's going to come, our amygdala is going to work really harder to keep us safe, because it's had so much experience of unsafety and insecurity. But when we do have those thoughts, then we put meaning around the thoughts. Like, something's wrong with me. All I think is negative. I'm tired all the time. Something's wrong with me. Like, I'm lazy. Why can't I do stuff? And you get this like us versus them mentality. Everyone else is fine but me. Because mental, low self-esteem is totally invisible. We're all walking around with it, especially in Western culture. We're all walking around with low self-esteem. But when you look at people, you can't see that right away. But you could see yourself, or you could feel yourself, and you could feel how bad you feel, and you feel like you're the only one. And then you're like, what's wrong? Why do I have this problem? It's hard to separate that from our sense of worth. If we're not happy, we just correlate it and connect it with our sense of worth, which obviously makes us feel worse. And then it kind of snowballs.
So that must be why, the chore piece is really a key piece for you, because it helps instill that pride and accomplishment, right? So your book is really geared towards teens. It's not geared towards parents. So how do you encourage kids to, yeah, anxiety? I'm so done with you. I love the title of it as well.
Thank you.
Listener, she held up the book, so if you're watching, you'll see it. But that is the title of her book. She's written it with teens in mind. So it's written to them. And because we want them to have that value of accomplishment, how do you encourage them to take on problems or challenges?
That is a great question, because the book, actually, many parents and educators and counselors are reading the book too, because they want to know how to help. But I also have, let me just do another plug. I also, if you're watching the video, you can see this. I also have another free download on my website, that's a Generation Z mental health survival guide, and it explains it. In this, I give a lot of activities that you could do in the home and in the classroom to build some of these skills up, to to decrease symptoms of anxiety and depression by doing these activities. So we really want to engage in creative things. We want to engage in problem solving, but like not problem solving like a problem, but creative problem solving. If we're going to make this wooden box, what kind of hinges do we want on it? Do we want the hinges hidden? Do we want them on the outside? Are we going to paint it? Is it going to be big? Is it going to be a flat lid? How are people going to open it? Well, how do we want to decorate it? Is functional or is it pretty? Uh, those decision making, that kind of problem solving, is really good for building up and stimulating the prefrontal cortex. And when we build up and stimulate that prefrontal cortex, then it has a lot more power over the anxiety. Like, your anxiety goes down the more you build up and stimulate your prefrontal cortex. So people who are engaged in creative activity, or engaged in problem solving, challenging themselves, learning something new, doing chores, it helps them in several ways. One, yes, it builds confidence, but and it does it biologically, like neurologically, it helps. But also, it's like we see ourselves as skilled. Right now, the younger generation, and I have to say adults too, because we're getting the same messages that they're getting, right? We see ourselves as unable. We see ourselves as unadaptable. We think that we can't handle stuff. We don't see ourselves as skilled. We live in this deficit mentality and we're just seeing all the things that we can't do, all things we haven't gotten to yet. We just have this really negative view of ourselves. And so if you engaged in things, then you'd start to relate to yourself and know yourself as someone who has skills. You have skills. Everybody has skills because the skills came even from evolution, right? Our skills and adaptability are there for everybody already. And so we have them. And obviously, nobody could get to the age they are. If you're 13, if you're 15, if you're 17, if you had no skills, you wouldn't be here. So we know that they have them. And I think that's a message us adults have to give is like, you have skills. We're going to show you that you have them. I do give tips on how to do that too. But so that's jodiaman.com/guide, jodiaman.com/guide. Get the Generation Z mental health resource guide. Very comprehensive download for you.
Yeah, I like that. So you actually break down chores into three different types, right? So the tedious ones that nobody ever wants to do, right? Taking out the trash, vacuuming, things like that. But I think what you were talking about a second ago is what you would call a challenging chore, right? Like we have to fix this or build this or
Create
something that,
something. Yeah.
yeah, make something that requires those critical thinking skills.
Sure. Let me review all three of those. So there's three kinds of chores that I delineated in my TEDx Wilmington talk. And one was tedious chores. And I'm going to tell you the importance of those. And then one's challenging chores. And then the last one's generous chores. So the first one, tedious, it's because, our brain has two functions. One is to survive and thrive, and the other is to conserve calories. Because for so long in our evolution, we didn't have access to food. We had to find our own food or hunt our own food. And so we really wanted to conserve calories. It was very important for survival. We don't need to do that anymore, but that capability is there. So when we're faced with tasks, our mind is like, is this for survival? No. Is it for pleasure or thriving? No. And it puts this biological resistance to try to keep us safe and keep us alive. But we don't need that anymore. But what happens is young people and people my age, all ages, right, are feeling that resistance and saying something's wrong. I don't understand why. I don't want to do this. They feel that resistance and we put a lot of meaning around it. Something's wrong with us, or why am I so tired all the time? Why am I so tired all the time? And then you probably hear young people say that. Probably all of you are hearing young people say that. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. That's this biological resistance that comes up. We could definitely override it. And if we continuously do these more tedious chores like we sweep every day, it's not so hard. If they never sweep and you ask your kids to sweep, it is a song and a dance, right? There's so much resistance. And when they start the resistance, then they really feel like, you're oppressing them by asking them to do this, and they're really rebelling, so it builds up because they make meaning around it. And they're like, this isn't fair, all of that comes out. So we don't understand this natural resistance that we have to doing chores. And if we did things every day, some of you have kids who you have them do the same thing every day and they don't complain as much. They just get it done. But if they haven't done it in a really long time and they do it, it's a problem. That's because if they're continuously doing these tedious chores, they're integrated. They know it's easy, that when the resistance comes up, they're like, I'm better off getting on the other side of it, right? They see that it's thriving to be on the other side of it because it's got to be done. Even if you don't care about it, it's got to be done to participate in the family, whatever, right? So we want them to continuously do tedious chores. We want kids to do hard things. We need to do hard things. So that gets to the second one, the challenge. We want to do hard things.
I want
Go
to
ahead.
stop. Yeah, I have
Yep.
a question about that. So
Great.
So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, that creates like these automatic behaviors, right? This muscle memory for, okay, we're done with dinner. It's time to do the dishes, right? Like, so it is a routine. It's just something that you have to do. So it makes it a little bit easier because you're just used to doing it. So if we take that idea and I think about how many parents alternate chores with their kids, right? So like, today it's Christopher's day to do to sweep, and right, like, so they alternate them. But if we apply that idea, then I would think maybe you should do them for a month at a time before you switch, or I don't
Well,
know.
maybe it depends. Are you switching and the other one has something else? Or, if there's three kids and three little jobs and they rotate, that would be okay. That's often enough. But if they have a sports, right? So they're in a sport. So for the 2 months they're at sports practice, so they don't do any chores around the house. This is what we do as parents. We don't give them the chores during that time, and then the sports season ended, and then you have them do the chores. It's different. But when they see their siblings do it and it's part of the routine, if it's every 3 days or something, that would be okay. That's frequent enough.
Okay.
But they might have something else during that time because they have to make their bed every day or something like that. Would be fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
Great.
Yeah. So challenging is our mind loves to be challenged, right? It's like our soul wants to be challenged because it's constantly looking for how to survive, like how to survive better, how to thrive better. And so we have this drive for challenge and it lights us up. We don't want a bad challenge, obviously, but we're going to have some. And so if we're constantly challenging ourselves in smaller ways, the bigger ones are going to be a lot easier to handle. You're going to have a lot of skills connecting with people. You're going to have skills in knowing where to find help, time management, all of those things that really help life be better, right? If you have some challenging chores or kids have some challenging chores, it's helpful. It sparks us. It creates the dopamine when we get it. It builds our confidence in ourselves that we can figure something out. That's hard.
Yeah, that
This
sense
so
of accomplishment
exactly.
and that you're bringing value to something.
Yeah, right. There's a sense of purpose as well. You see yourself as skilled, you build like confidence up. Usually with challenging chores, there's other people involved, not always, but sometimes. And so there's this bonding that's happening, which is very important for our well-being. And then the last one I delineated was generous chores because I like when kids do things for other people. If you're helping somebody or volunteering in the neighborhood or with the church or something, or just with the grandparents, helping other people and getting that integrated into their life, that we do stuff and we help other people. That's also really good for a sense of purpose. It's also really good for relationships, but it teaches them how to be, civic minded, and we need more I think we've really lost a lot of civic mindedness in this world, in this generation. So we really, with people on their phones or not in person. And so we lost a lot of that. And right now we need to get that back.
I would think that would build empathy as well.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. Of course.
Yeah. And I mean, and empathy is one of the last skills that we develop between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. And so to start nurturing that early on and kind of create that schema of empathy early on, I think what a neat way to do that too. I mean, you're accomplishing multiple things at one time.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Empathy is teachable. And, we have to teach it from age 2. You could start teaching empathy.
Yeah.
Obviously it goes much smoother when it's been your family culture from the beginning, right? So how would you encourage a parent who, if they're listening to our podcast today and wanting to try to implement, they're seeing what you're saying, that they're understanding the argument and they really want to try to implement this in their home, but it has not been the norm in their home and their kids are older, there's going to be some pushback. How do you recommend having that conversation with your family to make a change like that, where you're wanting to encourage them to, practice challenges at home?
Yeah. I think somehow make it fun.
Yeah.
Make it little challenges at first, smaller chores at first, chores that maybe y'all do together. So if it's like just doing the driveway or the walkway, but you're all doing it together, it's really quick. Then you have so much gratitude. It makes it so much easier. That wasn't so bad, was it? Oh, I'm so glad you helped with it because that went so fast. Whatever, something little and a positive experience, and then you could gradually get bigger. You could also have conversations. This might be hard, but this is really good for all of us, or I need it because of this or that and the other thing. Um, and then stay consistent. Know that there'll be pushback and don't take it personally. That's what's so hard as parents. We take all that personally. We think we've done something wrong, or we look at, if I did this the whole time, they wouldn't be doing this. But it's not necessarily helpful, to go down that path. You did it because there was other things going on, maybe a divorce or very busy, or you were taking care of your parents or something like that. And it was just easier to do things yourself instead of fighting with them all the time. Don't blame yourself. It happens. It happens. It's so easy to happen. This world is kind of it's a new place with all of the rapidness of things and the screens and pressure on us. So don't beat yourself up. And just like be gentle with yourself and be gentle with them. Start small, try to make it fun. That's all I
I
can
like
say.
that incorporation from that relational aspect too of, doing something together, like maybe starting off with a project that you do as a family,
My
right?
kids,
Not
my
a,
kids, my kids will call
you
me
need to
out.
learn hard things. So you're going to, clean out the
Yeah,
garage.
build that wall. Yeah, so I always thought, let's put music on and clean. And they just were like, you think that music helps, they'll do whatever they can to get out of it. So music doesn't help it make it fun. I'm like, yes, it does.
Um, my mom used to tell me that chores are required because that means you are a contributing member of the family. And so
Hmm.
it was a non-negotiable kind of conversation, right? That's what it means to be a contributing member of the family. And it drove me crazy, right? When she would say those words. But I catch myself thinking that at the same time, like, why am I the only one doing this? Right now, my kids, I'm a brand new empty nester. My youngest just left for college last week, so I don't have any help except for my husband. Um, but I would catch myself thinking that, okay, why are they not being contributing members of the family?
Because you have to teach them to be.
Mhm.
They're not going to do it, right?
Right.
Parenting, we're the frontal lobe. We're like the frontal lobe for our kids for a long time. They're not developing until 25. And so when their brain is like, is this for survival and thriving, or should I conserve calories? They're going to get resistance and we have to override because we know doing the things that we want them to do, whether it's chores or getting that essay done or whatever, is for their thriving, right? There's results that they want or that are positive for them in their life, but it's hard to relate it to this essay. And so we as parents have to be that prefrontal lobe for them and say, yes, you have to get it done. It'll feel good to get on the other side. Whatever trick you could say. I know you don't want to do it. Your brain, I tell people, I tell young people, your brain is trying to conserve calories, but you're fine. You could override it. Our mammalian brain could override that and say, I'm safe. I can do it. I have enough food. So once they override it, instead of being like, something's wrong, somebody's forcing me and I got to protest, they could override it with their brain and makes life a lot easier. So you have to train them to do that slowly, but
What
yeah,
are,
I mean, they get a sense of belonging. That is true.
yeah. What do you think about connecting chores with allowance, for example? We don't work for free for the most part in the adult world, right? Typically, our careers
But
come
we do
with
around the house. We do
salary.
our survival skills. All of
Okay.
our personal, like, we pay our bills. No one pays us to pay our bills. We have to call the repair person to fix our toilet. There is a lot of those things that we do. We have to, organize somebody's birthday party or something. No one pays us for those things. Yeah, some of it are our choice. It's our choice, except for there's results that we do want from them. If
Mhm.
our fridge is broken, we got to get it fixed or we're not going to have a fridge, right? So there is a lot of things that we do that aren't. So I think that parents could make their own decisions about this, what they want to do. So there might be chores that everyone has to do. And then there's these extra things that they could earn money for if they want to. And that I think is maybe the best of both worlds, that everybody helps with the dishes or helps with the dinner, sets the table or makes their bed or whatever, or laundry when they get old enough. And but in addition, if they want money, they could weed the garden or those kind of things that maybe are kind of above and beyond those daily tasks that we have to do every day just to run the house.
I really like that explanation because it answers an argument, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
for
need
sure.
to know why,
Yeah,
really. And we have the answers, you know. So I think that's what's important. If they really understand, it's harder to argue against it.
yeah.
They will. They will though.
Well, absolutely, right? Like if there's something to challenge, they will challenge it.
Yeah, that's what they're developmentally, that's exactly what they're supposed to be doing. So,
For sure. Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about some concepts from your book that were intriguing, and I just loved how you explained them. And so the book is about anxiety, right? And
yeah.
okay, these are the steps that as a teenager you get to take to minimize the anxiety that you're experiencing. And so I love that you talk about how, there's this misconception that anxiety is just fear, right? That it's just either this irrational fear or this nervousness. But you actually say that anxiety is anything that makes you bothered. I
Mm-hmm.
really
Yeah,
liked that
exactly.
word. So it's not just fear, but it could be frustration or being annoyed or being sad or upset or confused. I don't know what to do next. And so talk a little bit about how anxiety is not always what we say it is, not what
Right. Well, there's a
society.
lot of words for anxiety, but this is what helps you understand when we're upset, when we're angry, when we're nervous, when we're anxious, when things are weird, when we're confused. The hormone is the same. It's all adrenaline or cortisol. And adrenaline and cortisol works in the body very similar ways. They're stress hormones. And so cortisol is a little bit longer lasting and adrenaline's like immediate up and down. So when we have any of these upset feelings, there's not different hormones for every feeling. It's the same hormone. It's all adrenaline. And if you think that it's all adrenaline, you realize that adrenaline comes when you're bothered, when you're afraid, whatever, but originally when we were evolving, we have to keep going back to the brain because this helps people understand. We need to take the mystery out of anxiety, and then people are like, oh, because the mystery is what perpetuates it in a big way, right? So originally, uh, if somebody looked at us weird, we could be thrown out of the community, and that would mean death. In hunter gatherer times, like we needed a community. We couldn't survive on our own as humans. And so if you weren't sure about something, yes, you did need the adrenaline. So our brain was developed to release adrenaline at those times. If you got angry, it meant someone could beat you up or hurt you or whatever. So of course, the adrenaline's going to come because you need to have that superhuman strength, right? The whole point of adrenaline is to call your attention and decide to act, to survive, to flee or fight or, freeze if that's the last resort, we freeze. But anytime we're bothered at all could have meant risk. It doesn't always mean risk, but it could. And so our bodies needed that hormone to be released. So we were prepared in case it meant danger, in case it did. So, yes, I used to think of anxiety as just like fear when you're afraid, but I understand that the adrenaline is all these things, but I like to define anxiety as the leftover fear response when you're not in danger. So the leftover sympathetic nervous system, the leftover symptoms of adrenaline, the feelings that adrenaline brings to your body, mentally, physically, when you're not in danger. When you are in danger, you're doing something to survive. You're taking action and you're running back to the village maybe, and when you get to the village you're like huffing and puffing like, oh my gosh, guess what happened, the big animal, and I survived, and everyone's like, thank goodness you survived, they're hugging you, right? You're decompressing all of that, right? Your adrenaline's going down and being processed in this retelling of what happened, in the thankfulness of surviving. We don't have that kind of thing right now. you know we have the fear response, and it comes to our prefrontal cortex, and it's like, look around, if there's danger, tell me what to do. And the prefrontal cortex says, I don't see anything, but I feel it. Keep pumping the hormones because I feel it. That's not how it's supposed to work, but that's how it works nowadays. So yeah, so it's important for us to understand that we have this adrenaline. It's usually we're safe, but we put meaning around that feeling that we might not be. And so it perpetuates. That's why I like to call it the leftover fear response when you're not in danger. Because I don't want people are like, sometimes anxiety is good. It tells you to wear a helmet. Well, that's common sense. Let's call it something positive. So then, because people are like, I need some anxiety, it protects me. And I wanted to separate that out because it's hard to get rid of anxiety if it protects you. But if we understood anxiety to be something that you do not need, and there's smartness or common sense or skills that you have that help you survive, and we divide it up like that, it really helps people let it go if they need to, if they want to. And people want to because it's awful.
Sure. And I love how, you point out that when we put meaning to our thoughts, right, then when we attach feelings to that thought that, oh, I'm in danger, right, that's when we perpetuate the anxiety, right? Like it's our relationship with language. So this is the analogy that I use with in counseling. It's like, how as women, a lot of us have this emotional response to the number on the scale when we step on it. That's how much we weigh. Well, that's just our relationship with gravity. And so if we think about the number on the scale as just this metric that defines our relationship with gravity, the same way we can think about how language is just words. It's just words. And so when those thoughts pop in, we're the ones that say, that's a big deal. That's a thought. I should be upset about that thought, right? It's really just language.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's such a great way to explain it. And Dr. Jodi, in your book, you even talk about how the use of the term chemical imbalance has really kind of skewed our understanding of this topic. So let's dive in there a little bit, because I do think that is a misnomer. It is causing us to have poor conversations about this because we think of it as something is out of balance or out of whack.
Yeah, we think about something's wrong with us. And I think practitioners continue to use this metaphor or this way of thinking about it because I think it decreases stigma. They think that people will blame themselves less if they think of it as a chemical imbalance. And so their intentions are good, except for it does not actually work like that. It makes people think that they're different. Some people are balanced, but I'm not balanced. Also, using the word chemical. I mean, this is a pharmaceutical marketing tactic to use the word chemical instead of hormone. Hormone doesn't sound as threatening. Chemicals sound more threatening, and so that's why that term is being used. We're just talking about hormones. Adrenaline goes up and down all day. Serotonin could go up and down all day, and we could actually affect it. We could actually do meditation and make our serotonin come up and go down. And so I'm not against medicine. I think it's a tool and it saves people's lives. But the marketing of it makes us think about these problems in a way that really stall us, that make us, in order to make us dependent on them, but really stall us from thinking that we could get better, that it's a regular human response to our world, right? Anxiety, depression, lack of motivation, feeling stuck, feeling resistance, feeling angry. These are responses to our context. They're not mental illnesses. And so when we understand it that way and we understand where they're coming from, then we could do something about it. We could change that relationship with gravity, not with gravity, but with all of these problems, right? So if we that so the chemical imbalance, it's constantly changing. Our hormones are changing every minute. So there's never a balance, actually. We don't need to strive for that.
Well, and you mentioned in your book, it's not like you can put the amount of serotonin in your brain is on this side of the scale, which makes it imbalanced. I mean, you can't measure serotonin that way. And so,
No, right.
yeah.
Right. It's not even a real metaphor. I mean, like we don't know how much serotonin we have and what it is if we're depressed, if that is actually less. Like we're not measuring it. It's not a blood test and we're saying your chemicals are imbalanced. We don't have that capability. People are just going from what your symptoms are and saying it's it's a metaphor. It's not real.
Well, and
What?
it's a
Yeah,
big one. It's a dangerous one. It's one
right.
Common.
that drives the thinking that, okay, if I have depression, then I need something to increase the serotonin in my brain because I'm chemically imbalanced.
Yeah. But we're having, I think which you're bringing up a good point, dopamine. We're really
It's going to
interrupting
be
our
my next
dopamine
question.
cycle with our screens. And is that what you're going to say next? We're really interrupting that. Yeah, we're not measuring it. And it's not balanced or not balanced, but we definitely are struggling with being disinterested in stuff, not caring about things. And that's it not being interested in stuff, not getting excited about anything. When somebody, before COVID, it's even worse now because even in the last 5 years, our screen time skyrocketed. It was bad before COVID, but it's been even worse since because there's more apps, there's more stuff to do. It's just constant. But it's interrupting our dopamine cycle. So we're seeing the problems even more. I forgot what I was going to say about it, but it's like, oh, I know. Before that, when somebody came into my office and was like, I don't know, I don't really care if I get better. I don't think I will get better, but I don't really care. I know that they're isolated.
Mm.
I know that that's a dopamine issue. That's not a depression issue. It's a symptom of them being isolated. They're so isolated that their dopamine hasn't hit. They haven't had dopamine in a long time. They haven't done anything interesting. They're probably sleeping all day and up alone all night. And this is why they're not interested in anything. It's a dopamine issue. But people look at that and say, well, you're severely depressed. Yes, it causes the depression. It's not the depression that causes that. It's the isolation or the dopamine that causes that. And now we're seeing it with the screen time interrupting our dopamine cycle. We're seeing it even though people aren't isolated, but also they're isolated
Mm-hmm.
behind the screen.
Yeah.
Right. You can look at a family and they're all on their screens as opposed to being connected. So they are isolating themselves, even if you're in proximity to another person.
Exactly.
Are you concerned about your child or teens reading or spelling? Are you worried their reading curriculum isn't thorough enough? Well, most learning struggles aren't the results of poor curriculum or instruction. They're typically caused by having cognitive skills that need to be strengthened. Skills like auditory processing, memory, and processing speed. Learning RX one on one brain training programs are designed to target and strengthen the skills that we rely on for reading, spelling, writing, and learning. Learning RX can help you identify which skills may be keeping your child or teen from performing their best. In fact, we've worked with over 120,000 children and adults who wanted to think and perform better. They'd like to help you get your child on the path to a brighter and more confident future. So give Learning RX a call at 866 Brain 01 or visit learningrx.com. That's learningrx.com.
So, speaking of connectedness, you do talk about that and why teens need connectedness, and you even give some tips on how we can increase that. So, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's in this book too. That's in my guide, Connectedness, How to Increase Connectedness. And my major thing for 2025 in my platform is telling people to get together in person. That's the best thing that you could
Yeah.
do is get together in person, but have conversations with young people. If you have consistent conversations with young people, they're going to start to tell you more and more about their life. If those, obviously, if those interactions are positive, but for teachers, have a space where you could tell kids they could come talk to you. Um, Parents, if you have places where you're talking to your kids about concepts of the world or their own things or their friends, those kind of things build rapport and build bonding and have help them feel connected. They want to belong to something. So this goes the same as doing a chore. Get them involved in a club, get them involved in doing something. This usually is a family culture. If a parents go to work and come home and watch TV all night, don't do anything, usually the kids aren't participating in stuff. It's part of the culture of a family. If the parents are doing this and that and the other thing, they're very involved, they have a lot of friends, then the kids are doing that too because that's part of the family culture. So you have to model that.
So, you're showing this is what we value by,
Yes, but you're also you're normalizing being with people. You're normalizing doing things. You're normalizing volunteering, for the club and, helping with the logistics. You know, yeah. If you belong to a club, you have a sense of belonging, but there's also like an event. And so you're bringing cookies or, you're doing something also. So there's like the work, but there's a sense of belonging that's so important, that connectedness. And that's what your mom was saying when she was saying you're participating in a family. There's a sense of belonging in that. So when kids who do chores, they have a higher sense of belonging in the family system as well. So,
I think that's why video gaming anymore is so addictive for our boys, because it is community building. It is connection building for them, along with all of the other pieces that come with video gaming. Um, so, with that in mind, because that connection piece is really key, do you encourage teens to, find a sport, try a sport, get into, clubs are hard to find other than in school, right? In colleges, and then as adults, we struggle to find these communities. So, in a world that's so much more digital than it is in person, how do we encourage them to get out and make those connections?
And recognize that a large portion of our audience are homeschool parents.
yeah. Well, a
Yeah.
lot of homeschool parents I know, they do have activities with other homeschooling families. And so they do once or twice a week, they're doing an activity or a field trip or something, a dance class or something with other people or a robotics class, something. There's classes in the community. There's sports that are club sports. There's things that are at school. Uh, there's things that we don't even know about. I had a client. I was encouraging her. She was really isolated, and I was like, fine. Even like sit and knit, but she found bells. Those big bells, and she was in
Church
a
bells. Yeah.
group.
Handbells.
Yeah, or a
Yeah.
choir. Like for adults, like
Yeah.
maybe we need to just join a choir, and once a week you're with the choir, and then you sing on the weekend or something like that. It There are things actually, if you do belong to a church, you might volunteer for the welcoming committee, or you might volunteer for one of the missions that, help in hospice, or, volunteer at the hospice center near you. There are unlimited things that you could do. Um, yeah, and we can't think of them, and so we kind of think there isn't any, but there are, and these are needed. Get involved in your local theater.
Yeah, that
There's
was going
always
to be
stuff
my
to do.
suggestion.
That
Yeah,
was what I
community
did my whole
theater.
childhood. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, and
So
there's always ways, like all of the things you've talked about today are included in community theater, which is really funny because there are chores involved in being in theater. If you don't make the
teamwork.
cast, there's set design, there's so much other things that you can do to build skill and grow. And it's that um, camaraderie that you
Yeah.
from that.
Homeschool parents should look into something like that, some kind of a theater, because you could do tech if they don't want to perform. There's other jobs there.
Yeah,
So,
lighting, so many skills.
yeah.
Costumes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And great stuff that'll help you in life too. So, I'm on a board in my local children's theater. So my daughter grew up in theater and still is an actress. So I'm a theater mom.
Yeah, I take so much pride in telling people that I was a child actress, because I spent my entire childhood on stage. And
Oh,
so it was the way I connected with others. It was the way that I felt like I brought value to the world.
Yeah.
And
We need that, right? We need entertainment to get through our hard times. Think about time immemorial. Like there was always some performance.
yeah,
I don't know. Always in human history, there was some kind of a ceremony performance, and then it turned into more of a play. And, I mean, just like forever.
yeah.
before I know we're getting late in our talk, and I want to make sure we talk about it because this particular issue is fascinating to me. But you have a stance on scary movies. Let's talk about that. As someone who is perpetually fearful of scary movies,
Me
why are
too.
they important for our teens?
I think that everyone's a little bit different. So you're saying this, Sandra, because I had an episode of my live show on Monday nights. My daughter's on with me sometimes, and we did an episode on scary movies. But really, we started to talk about how stories and how performances really help us heal, have the potential to help us heal. And so if you have anxiety, some people with anxiety love scary movies. Some people with anxiety won't watch scary movies. So it depends on the person. Some people who've experienced trauma like scary movies because it seems like a way they could release some of the tension that they feel or some of the things because they could relate to the characters. So it doesn't have to be a horror movie. It could be a emotionally sad movie or something like that. There's a catharsis that happens that we're able to process some of our history and our self via the movie. So if it's anxiety over someone, killing us, some of that gets processed during the movie. Then for the other person, that could be stimulating. Someone like me, I watch a movie like that, and then I'm scared. I'm scared or more scared. But some people, it's relieving them. So interesting how anxiety affects people in completely different ways. And I think part of that episode was acknowledging that stories in general have the potential to heal, but people could, in terms of scary movies, people do respond to them differently. But
My kids think they're hilarious.
I know. I wish I felt like that.
I do not.
I'd be
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not watching that. But they know it's fiction, right? So they
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
think
They're
it's
looking for all the errors. They are totally watching it with an eye of
I
trying to
mean, that's
catch
good
like
too. That's
yeah,
great
trying to
too.
catch the mistakes that were made.
Like if you think about it, that's problem solving,
Yeah.
right? So they're in the critique of the movie. I also like learning concepts through, so we're all watching TV and we're all watching things together, but thinking about empathy when you're talking about the show afterwards and thinking about the characters or why they decide to do what they did. Why did they why did they decide the negative thing? Why did they decide the positive thing at the end? Talking about that because there's a distance, right? They're not emotionally involved. They could develop their concepts through that, seeing that from that distance. That's going to help them in their life. Yeah. So I love critiquing shows afterwards. My daughter had a friend that came to the movies with us, and she was like flabbergasted because on the way home we're like analyzing this movie and we're talking about all the things and all the parts, and her family didn't do that, and she loved it. It was so stimulating to like think about not only the characters, but like, yeah, if there's mistakes in there or holes in the plot and all of that, we love to analyze that all because it like stimulates the mind. It's bonding. It gets us thinking about stuff. We want to teach our kids how to read the world,
I love
how
that.
to understand different things.
My daughter and I were just having this conversation just last week, actually. She's moving. She lives in Austin right now, and she's moving back to Virginia. And when Wicked came out, I was like, "Oh, you need to go see Wicked," because she was having a hard time just at work and just a lot of other things. I'm like, "You need to go." Go. She loves movies anyway, so I
Yeah.
didn't take much prodding. But she has been addicted to that movie since she went to see it. I think she's seen it like three or four times.
Oh, so
She's
good.
listened
They
to
did a
the
great
music
job.
they did, and she's listened to the music like on repeat over and over and over. And I asked her, kind of in line with what you were saying, I asked her why she was just feeling such kinship with this movie, and she was just like, it's just all of it. It's the being misunderstood and being alone and, friendships and like, cause she's getting ready to move, the friendship piece is, so she's like, it feels like it encapsulates my whole life right now.
Yeah, you see the development of the characters in
Yeah.
a way that sometimes things are so fast we don't see that development, but they really develop because they have the ability to do it through song. We did an episode on that too. Lily and I did an
Oh, you
episode on
did?
The Wicked. Yeah, it was really fun. We watched the movie and then we talked about all those themes around friendship and how at first like you're afraid and you don't want to associate, and then when you see the what's right and those kind of things and being brave and lots of good themes in there.
Have you read the book?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yes.
mean, the book is so much richer. I think the
Yes.
Oh,
cinematography in the movie
always.
was phenomenal, and I of course saw the stage production too. Um, but the book, you really see the angst. Like you really get into the angst of the characters, and I've always been fascinated by what makes someone evil, right? Like we're typically not born that way. And so you really build empathy for the
Yeah.
Wicked Witch of the West
Yeah.
when you read the book. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's really great. It's really great. I think they did such a great job. Can't wait to the second one.
I know, right? I did not realize the movie was just the first half. So at the end, when it
You
said
really what?
to be
Would it stop?
continued, I went, what? What? What?
Intermission.
I mean, it's
My
a good
daughter's
thing
mad. My
right,
daughter's mad at me that I haven't like dug deeper to figure out what happens next because I don't
Oh,
know.
she's
I'm
got to watch it on stage somewhere.
oh, it's
She
so
just
good.
got to find it and watch it on stage.
We
So she
tried
gets,
to go. I actually had tickets to go. I took bought tickets for my mom. And then my husband and I were going to take my mom for her birthday, and then COVID hit. So wah wah.
uh-uh.
All
I'll
right. So,
plan
Dr.
another
Jodi,
trip.
how can our listeners find more of you? How can they work with you? How can they reach you? Tell us where you are.
Yeah, my website is jodiaman.com, jodiaman.com. You go / and live, hear about my live show. It's Monday nights at 8 p.m. I have call-in guests who I do live coaching right on the show, live counseling. So you can find my books on there, hundreds of videos. I've done hundreds of videos for over 10 years. And so you can find my books on there and the guide, get the guide, get that guide and download it and read it. You could read it in like 20 minutes and get so much information about how to help the young people in your life.
Yeah, I loved it. And it was so organized and, each area that you talked about mattering, about agency, all of that was so clearly delineated and with actionable tips. That's what we really love to offer our listeners is actionable tips. And so, listeners, you get it instantly when you go to her website to download it. You don't have to wait. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are out of time, so we need to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you so much for listening today. If you like us, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Brainy Moms. If you would rather see our faces, you can find us on YouTube at The Brainy Moms. And we would love it if you would leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts if you think we're awesome. But that is all the smart stuff that we have for you today. We hope you feel a little bit smarter. Catch you next time.